see a full house, and I think the principal driving force is not the fact that it's a forest conservation working group meeting, but that we're talking about money. Show me the money, right? And so I just want to do a quick check to make sure our hybrid participants are able to hear us clearly. We've had a couple of owl issues in the last meetings, but it sounds like you guys made it now that you're reading us loud and clear. Fantastic. Okay, good. Well, welcome for all of us on hybrid and Zoom. We have a full house here at Ag and Open Space to launch this meeting, and we're really excited. This is kind of like coming full force around to see a full house for our forest conservation working group meetings. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Adriana to launch us on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kim, and welcome everyone. I'm really glad to have you all here and see some old faces and new faces. And so every month we start off with some general updates. We just kind of like hear from the room what is new, what's new things that we want to share about our projects, about what we're seeing out in the field. I wanted to first pass it over to Chris Grable, who's representing District 4, and for him to give us an update about all that's happening there. And then with whatever remaining time, we'll go around for each of us to pipe up just a whatever update you have, and then we'll move on to our kind of packed agenda. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm here representing District 4. James is also the co-chair of the North Coast Resource Partnership, currently with Leaf Hill and Karuk Tribe. So happy to connect with NCRP funding sources, technical advisory, all of the wonderful things that NCRP is doing. I'm sure you're aware of, and that we'll continue to talk about. Just some really amazing morale boosting stuff. I don't know if anyone was able to see the climate resilience and action plan, the comprehensive action plan that was presented by our climate division on Tuesday. But, there's a charrette of things that talk about impacts, action, goals, attainable goals. And for us at the county is a lot of infrastructure, a lot of fleet, fleet conversion, zero waste streams, food waste, all of these different elements. But what really stood out was the impact and the potential impact of working in natural lands. And Simone Albuquerque and Jada Nabayan, they disaggregated a lot of the state data on this and also looked at our current, just what the county owns and manages, right? In Sonoma County for national working lands, specifically, forests and natural lands. And their current data and projected data by 2030 says with just a little bit more, like literally twice as much as we're already doing, we can become carbon neutral by 2030, if not, with even more than that, become carbon negative, and it really blows everything else out of the water in terms of price per GHG metric ton of GHG. It's 20 times more cost effective to do the work on working in natural lands, specifically with RX burns and treatments of any kind that are, evidence-based, science-based, whether it's vegetation management, grazing, and even mastication, but primarily, hand treatments, grazing, shaded fuel breaks, these types of things, right? They looked at that and said, by 2030, we could sequester 8 million tons just in the natural lands that we have in Sonoma County. I think it was 35,000 acres RX burns and 27,000 acres of managed forest land, shaded fuel breaks, treatments of any kind. Currently, we're at about a third of that. We've already done it in the last year. I think Chief Tuberville said we did 5,500 acres in our district. And I said, wow, these are attainable. Like there might actually be a future on the planet for my daughter. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty exciting for me. So just really excited that we have that data. We have that inventory, that carbon inventory is really starting to take shape. And from our district's perspective, we have the most forest of any district in the county. Second is Linda Hopkins in District 5. And we're really trying to lean into that. Challenge us, figure out how we can help with funding, match funding, not just incentivize private landowners, but also the technical assistance from NCRP, from this working group, from subject matter experts. So no one's kind of left out like, oh, you should be doing this. And then, well, are you gonna help? Do you have expertise? Do you have money? Well, it benefits all of us in a county with 187,000 parcels to help each other and have that mutual aid. So we're here to do that, and I hope we can get not just hit those 2030 goals, but blow them out of the water.
Thanks, Chris, really appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for those comments.
We're all about setting and hitting goals, so that's awesome. All right, I'm gonna move down the row and say, Deb, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ed. I'm from Pepperwood. I don't have any updates today. Just here to find out about money. Just kidding. We do have an organizational update. We're in the process of hiring a new conservation science manager. We've had a couple of positions turnover kind of at our organizational level. So we're really excited with the direction that we're heading. This one, some new folks coming on board, which I'm sure we'll post about when it's all finalized and stuff.
I'm Shay, also with Pepperwood. I also don't really have any updates. Devin kind of gave them all, so.
Sweet, thanks.
Want to go to the screen and just kind of.
Yes, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go to our next person on the screen is Christy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christy with Circuit Rider. For those of you that don't know what Circuit Rider does, is we're a local nonprofit. We've been around since 1976. And one of the things that we do that's relevant to this group is we have a workforce development program for young people ages 16 to 30 who are interested in natural resources and land management. Just a quick update, because I know that we're pressed for time with our packed agenda. We just completed year 3 of a forest health project that we're doing out in Occidental. We just finished it yesterday, actually. And that's something that is on a property owner who has several acres, and he has a conservation easement. And part of our work doing vegetation management with our youth crew and fire fuels abatement is funded by EQIP funds. So something that I know is going to be talked about today. It's nice to see everyone.
Thanks, Christy.
Nice, great to see you too. And all right, going down, Kim.
All right, yeah, so I have a presentation in a moment, and you'll hear all about what we're doing with with the different grant programs, so I'll go ahead and pass. Do you want to go next? You're also.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Sloan and I am from the NRCS, and I'll also be talking, so I'll pass so everyone has time to talk today. These are our 2 summer interns.
Hey everyone, I'm Micah from Blue Forest, who will also be presenting today. So I'll mostly pass, but just as a quick preference, we are a conservation finance nonprofit, and we work to help provide financing to get projects done more quickly and help to unlock new sources of funding to increase the overall pot of dollars which is spent towards forest restoration and other types of land solutions.
My name's Ariella. I'm also from Blue Forest. You'll hear me talking a lot with it, so I won't say anything more for now.
I'm Dee Swanheiser, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Forest Working Group along with Fred Ufrat. We're, I think, practically 20 years old, which is wonderful, and we're thriving. Thanks to Adriana and the Open Space District and everyone that participates. I wanted to give a little overview of my group taking action for living systems. We're sort of an offshoot from the Forest Working Group. And we were the ones that invited Blue Forest today to come and speak and promote what they're doing for all of us. But for taking action for living systems, we are working in the 4 counties of Napa, Sonoma Lake, and Mendocino that encompass 5,000 square miles, linked by its natural landscape and nature-based economy. Nationally famous, as we all know, wine country, iconic redwoods, Pacific Ocean coastline. And for nearly 200 years, our economy is built on nature and the benefits that nature provides, including wine, forestry, fishing, and tourism. Along with renewable resources, the region also provides ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration and fresh water supply and soil health. There is a need, in our opinion, for new social and economic systems that sustain the nature-based economy while supporting regenerative activities. Long-term ecosystem resilience will require building from these efforts to conduct landscape level risk management planning and investment prioritization. public funding alone is unable to sufficiently support and grow the capacity of local community organizations to implement all of the things that we need to do, the interventions. Addressing the scale and urgency of climate and wildfire risks will require looking beyond existing institutional arrangements to develop new ways to align stakeholder interests and attract private capital towards restoration. So I'll leave it there, but I know that Blue Forest and others who are here today to present their financial, programs. I'm excited to hear about them, and then I hope that after our presentations, everyone will mingle and meet the personalities and the people that are here, because they are interested in making projects happen in Sonoma County. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks,
I'm
Dan.
Ann Hamilton.
Before we go to Anne, actually, I'm gonna toggle back to the
That's
screen
fine.
just to bring us back over there, but thanks so much, Steve. All right, oh, yeah, Eric is next. There's so many people on there.
All right, hello everyone, Eric Schuss from Sonoma Ecology Center. It's nice to see so many faces and new faces, so many faces we know and so many new faces. Been very busy, really focused on tending the land, which was a veg management grant program funded resource that's supposed to be originally a book, but now it's turned into a website. It's fully functional and open. I'm going to share, we have in line with what we're talking about today, a funding page. Oh, I can't share it, but otherwise, if whoever's sharing wants to just go to Tending the Land, it'd be pretty easy to navigate to the funding page too.
Here, try it again now.
All right. Oh yeah, got it. Ooh, I'm in. All right, so you got the main page, tendingtheland.org up at the top, and pretty simple, kind of talking about an iterative approach. So you have adaptive management anyways. So over on the menu, you can see learn, plan, do, and do it all over again. In this case, funding is under plan. See some nice pictures of stewardship around the land. Whoops, I didn't click it, I guess. There we go. So pretty basic, but it's a nice place to send people, especially if you want like a quick down and dirty about funding, how to get it, different factors at play. Happy to take feedback too. It's nice to get all of the professionals' eyes on this. So they can read through, learn a little bit more. And at the bottom here, you'll find links to, a lot of the programs that are regularly used. A lot of them will be talked about today, but also a few more in here, and get right to their websites. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show quick, but super excited to learn more about the funding. It's always a bit of a how do you say that? Like a bottleneck in the process for many people. So glad to be here.
Hey, Eric, could you put your link in the chat, please?
Absolutely. You beat me to the punch. That's what I was just going to do.
Thank you.
All right, great, thanks, Eric. And then I'm gonna go to Becky, if you're there. And if you're not there and you need to come back, then Jason Mills. Jason, are you ready? Oh, sweet.
All set. Hey, great to see everybody. Yeah, I'm out here doing some Sonoma County forest work, conservation work. And yeah, we've been going at it. I'm Jason Mills. I'm a licensed tree and landscape contractor for Ecological Solutions, also a restoration and fire ecologist, just trying to do the good work for Sonoma County. And we've had some great projects. We teamed up with CCNB and treated 3 miles of road up on Calistoga Road, where we were able to do some really good vegetative management work, addressing invasive plants, doing some shaded fuel break along with some thinning. And we hopped over to big HOA in Santa Rosa and treated 20 acres of commons there, where we were able to take out 2,000 invasive trees, all part of a shaded fuel break project and thinning project, and about 40 cubic yards of material out of there chipped up and piled for fuel reduction going into the fire season. Now we're out here on Sweetwater Springs on a big parcel doing another 40 acres up here just east of Healdsburg, doing some roadside clearance and it's just great to do the good work. You know, these projects are partially funded by North Bay Forest Improvement Program and EQIP funding. So it's great to see the grants going to good work, and yeah, just super happy to be doing it. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thanks, Jason. All right, and just because we have so many people online, I'm gonna go to Sarah next, or actually back to Becky, if you're there. Is that Becky Hopper?
Oh, hi. I'm not doing well with this meeting because of my inability to be really technologically up to date. So I'm just listening to what everybody's saying.
No problem, good to see you. All right, and then on to Jill Butler.
Good morning, Jill Butler, representing Gualala River Watershed Council. We're still awaiting the release of the Gualala River Watershed Management Plan, but the writing is complete, and I gather the RCD is editing it and adding graphics and polishing it up, and someday you will all have access. And that plan included some implementation projects, and then the next step will be trying to get those funded, and hopefully working with a bunch of the funders speaking to us today. That's it for me.
Nice. All right. Okay, maybe I'll bring us back to the room, and you're not good.
I'm Ann Hamilton with Greenbelt Alliance. We are a conservation advocacy group, and we've been working on we're partnering with Ag and Open Space and doing a research project in the Springs. It's a wildfire buffer zone pilot, got funded by a grant. Our partners, Sonoma Ecology Center, have been working with us, and actually Pepperwood did some initial mapping for us, which was great. And looking at what it takes to bring the players together and evaluate the land. We've been doing a lot of work with different data sets and logic behind data sets and whose maps, what map are you actually creating and what is it actually telling you, which is quite complex, as you all know. So it's been really interesting work. We're wrapping up this phase of it and looking at what it would take to actually implement something like this. So it's been a great project. It's been about a year. So, yeah. And by the way, G is on our board. So we get to steal a little bit of D.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay, Megan.
Hi, Megan Reeves with CAL FIRE. I am a Sacramento-based employee. I am the program coordinator for the California Forest Improvement Program and the Forest Stewardship Program. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about CFIP and to try and give out some copies of the Forest Land Steward, which is funded by a grant from one of our programs. And so please come and take magazines, as many as you want.
All right. Back to the screen, is Carol there? And maybe while Carol is joining, I'll go to Brooke and then come back to Carol.
Good morning, everyone. Brooke Edwards, Sonoma County Regional Parks. We're busy lining up a number of different prescribed burns for this fall. We have 120 acres lined up at Tole Regional Park, and about 30 acres that we want to do up at Monoreal Redwoods in partnership with CAL FIRE and Marshall Tuberville up there. So we're looking forward to getting those burn units prepped this fall, and then hopefully do some burns probably in November. We're also looking at about 20 acres in Shiloh Ranch Regional Park as well. And then the other hat I wear is I work at Santa Rosa Junior College. And this semester, we were able to get the wildfire resilience program back up and running. This is an internship program that trains students up on fuel reduction using chainsaws, prescribed fire, pile burning, And good to hear that Chris Grable is in the house. I want to give a shout out to him. And James Gore, funding for this semester at the Santa Rosa JC for the internship program came from District 4. They were able to provide the funding to get us back and running. And of course, we're looking for future funding to keep this program going. But it's so important, the program, to develop that workforce, as well as the other programs there, circuit riders, CCNB. It's important to be training up kind of this workforce to get this work done out on the ground that Chris was talking about. So big shout out to Chris. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's it.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, just looking at the time, I scheduled us really, I made a very, very tight agenda without really thinking it fully through. So, I think maybe I'll just take like 3 more people who want to say, just maybe 3 faces that we've never seen before, just as an introduction would be great. So I'm seeing a couple of, I think, landowners in this corner. Maybe I'll start with, well, actually, I'll let you introduce yourself because you're one of our speakers, and then we'll pop over to our landowners.
Sure, Phil Saxa with Blue Forest, but I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
I'm just a landowner trying to find a way to restore our forest that was ravaged by the Walbridge fire 4 years ago.
Now, you can't say just a landowner. You know, you are the most important folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, really glad you're here. And where's your property?
It's located between Hillsburg and Guerneville. We have got the Austin Creek recreational area and are the headwaters for Palmer Creek. Palmer Creek, which feeds into Mill Creek, which then feeds into the Russian River. Oh, my name is Steve.
Nice. Thanks, Steve.
I'm Donna, and I'm probably a neighbor of this, in the same area, and the office, McGregor's Road. We have, 86 acres. I've been living for years.
Oh, that's just above us.
Oh, hi. Folks don't always meet each other, you know, but a huge piece of land, like, oh, who's that? I have no idea. So we're just also trying to figure out how to not do it all ourselves, because we've been clearing for the last 4 years almost today. The Walbridge fire, and also paying people to do it, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm doing more.
Yeah, really glad you're here.
My name's Lynn, and I'm here to learn. My neighbors have land, and they have concerns, and we've all been working together and talking, and I'm here to do it.
Oh, fantastic. All right, and what area are you in? Okay, great.
Lynn has been one of our stellar volunteers at Calabasas Creek Open Space Preserve as well. He's done a lot of stewardship work on that property.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. And are there any other landowners on the Zoom that should introduce themselves?
Nico and
Yeah, and does Chris have their hand raised for that reason?
Hi, this is Chris Kilgore. Brooke Edwards, I need to talk to you. We have a new Firewise community, Central Sonoma Coast Firewise community. It's going to be approved by CAL FIRE pretty soon. But we wrap around the parks. And now we wrap around not only Cruz, rhododendron, but Sonoma County regional down in the south part of it. So Brooke, can I have your email, please?
Yes, you can. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. And then also, Christy, I need to talk to you too. Could you put your email in the chat? And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for letting me yak.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Chris. All right, next, let's go to, did I hear Nico? Yeah.
Yeah, hi, good morning, folks. Good to see so many faces and so many folks who, since we're talking about funding, have supported our work. Nico Alexander from Shelterwood Collective. We're a small, about 900-acre forest preserve about 20 minutes north of Cazadero. We've actually been a little bit on pause this past 2 months or so because of the heat. But to date, we've completed about 250 acres worth of thinning. Again, thanks to a lot of amazing support of folks who are here today, and we have another 200 or so planned by the end of the winter. But coupled with that will be a number of, I think we have about 300 acres worth of units that we're preparing to burn pretty extensively all of next year. So the past year and a half, 2 years has been getting the entire 900 acres ready for large landscape level, valley level, controlled, stewarded fire come next year, which we're really excited about. And as soon as we have a little bit more of that on the books, we'll be sharing it because we'd love to invite all of you to some of those burns. I'm joined by my colleague Jose Becerra, who's here, who's similar to Pepperwood. We're very fortunate to be growing, and Jose is our restoration manager. You'll probably be seeing more of him in the days and months and years to come. That's it from us. Thank you again.
Awesome, thank you. Jose, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, Jose Becerra, as Nico mentioned, Forest Restoration Manager, and looking forward to all the learning and appreciate all the help.
Great, all right, and then Daniel is next.
Hi, yeah, a landowner out on West Side Road, one of Becky's neighbors on Mount Jackson Resort Road, got a couple hundred acres, which, yeah, it's a lot of work. So we're always looking for ways to get it under control and improve it.
That's great. Yeah, I recognize you and Svetlana from a meeting that we had out in Greenville.
Yeah, and I'm Daniel's wife and partner.
Awesome, so good to see you guys.
Nice to see you guys.
Thanks for coming. All right, and then I think Brian is next, and I think that may cover all of our landowners that are attending today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us. I'm here on behalf of the Monorail Recreation and Park District and with my partner Stephanie Felch. And we are working with Open Space and the Sonoma Land Trust on a property that is in the middle of a potential transfer between Sweetwater Springs Water District and the Monorail Recreation and Park District. It's about 350 acres and it spans a gap between the newly acquired regional park, Monorail Redwoods, and Willow Creek State Park. And we're just here to hear and learn.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, I think that was really worth it. We didn't get to talk about our picnic, but we'll do that another time. And we're just gonna go into our funding presentation. I'm really glad to see so many landowners here and partners who are taking the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the many grant and cost share programs that are out there. Some of these are really long-lived. They've been around for a long time. We want everyone to know about them. Some of them are a little newer, and some of them are brand new. So it's fun to kind of go through the whole spectrum of funding opportunities that are out there for everyone. And we wanted to start off with the California Forest Improvement Program, which is a program run by CAL FIRE, and Megan is here to talk about it. I'm just going to put her presentation up real quick.
If I could just do one more little intro, I think this workshop specifically on financial resources for landowners really is the brain trust of Jill Butler, who's one of the founding members as well of this working group. And it's been a part of, and it was an annual tradition, is to have this type of workshop speak to the issue of how do we cover the cost on these things. And so I really appreciate all the people who came to be able to speak on this particular topic, but really want to also recognize the fact that landowners need support. And so how we do it collectively is really what we're trying to resolve here. Some of these programs are going to be landowner specific, others are going to be more community or organizational specific. So just keep your eyes on how that particular scenario plays out, and by all means reach out to the folks who are speaking today.
Absolutely. All right, and then Kim, I think to make my screen share appear, you might have to go into a new view. Like I think the view button.
Okay,
I'm not totally sure.
yeah, if you cut it,
And then,
you should be the, person who can share the most, because you're the
Yeah.
project manager.
I think, so I am screen sharing, but, okay,
There we go.
that's it. All right.
How do we advance slides? Do I let you know when you advance it? Okay, got it. It's right here, fine? Okay. Once again, Megan Reeves, Cal Fire Forest, California Forest Improvement Program.
Sorry.
No worries. There's our CPIP website on the CAL FIRE page and the email inbox for anyone in Sonoma County to contact our program. Unfortunately, the program is not staffed in Sonoma County, so that's why it's going to a generic inbox.
GPS signal lost.
But someone will respond to that inbox. Next slide, please.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I'm still seeing the agenda.
Oh,
okay.
Same, I'm still seeing the agenda.
Yeah, we're not seeing what you're seeing on your screens, unfortunately.
Zoom had a recent update where in order to see somebody else's screen, you want to look at the top of the Zoom and there should be a few different options. There should be new participants, there should be a my screen thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so Adriana, the thing that you're clicking on is just visible on our screen here. Yeah, everybody has to click their own. It's really annoying.
That is annoying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, now I can see it.
We can't do anything.
You can see it now? There's tabs up.
There are different tabs up there. That's right. Each person on their own screen has to click on the tab that says screen sharing.
Okay, so if you're joining from your computer, you're gonna have to look at the tabs at the top of your Zoom screen and choose the tab that says my screen, I think, or just toggle around.
It should show Adriana Stagnero's screen at the top bar. Can you all see that now?
Yeah, I can see them.
You can get it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Eric, you look befuddled. Are you seeing, are you good to go? Okay. Miss Beth then,
Oh,
okay.
no, I got it right away. I zoned out for a second. I was reading chat.
Megan, apologies, we're ready to roll now, thanks.
No worries. Let's see, so CFIP is a fairly old program. It was initiated in 1978. Its purpose is to increase public investment in California forest management. And it is a narrowly focused program that was set up to benefit tree farmers. It was tied in time with the development of the timber yield tax and timber production zoning on land. So it is very specific in its focus. And later on, when I talk about the ranking criteria, which are set down in statute, you will notice that some of them don't seem pertinent necessarily to today's conditions. And that is why, because the program is old and based on the priorities that were set in place at the time. But it is a good program. It has been around for a long time and hopefully will continue to be around. We provide eligible landowners with technical and financial assistance for planning, reforestation, and forest health projects. See, if you go to our CFIP webpage, you will see some documents posted under more information that will be very useful for you. CFIP is a cost share reimbursement program, and we can reimburse up to 90% of the cap rates that we have set. These cap rates are based on real data from projects completed statewide. So in Sonoma County, these rates do tend to be low because of the lack of abundant contractors in the area, the haul distances and such. Costs in Sonoma County do tend to be higher. So something to expect when you look at these cap rates. If they seem low to you here in Sonoma County, they probably are. The cap rates on that sheet are listed by contractor cap rates, but also self-labor in the following pages. Next slide, please. I alluded to this earlier, but CFIP is a competitive program and our ranking criteria are mostly set down in statute. You can see a copy of what our current ranking criteria are posted to the website. Many of them do not necessarily benefit Sonoma County landowners. One of the things, for example, is past history of logging and high timber site quality. So not a lot of small landowners in Sonoma County are actively engaged in logging practices, but That is something that if you do that, if you have a non-industrial timber management plan or a history of THPs, that will make you a competitive applicant in Sonoma County. Again, that's posted on the website for you to look at if you'd like to see how we evaluate packages against each other. Next slide, please. Eligibility. This is another one that's hard for a lot of Sonoma County landowners. You have to have a minimum of 20 acres to apply for the program, and you cannot band together with neighbors. That has been something that was historically allowed, but the lawyers informed us that we were on very shaky ground doing that. So we pulled back on that. You cannot have more than 5,000. You generally don't encounter that problem. The ownership must be non-industrial, and it must have 10% canopy cover of native trees. So oak woodland does meet that threshold here in Sonoma County. We contract directly with the deeded landowner, so we cannot give grants to leaseholders, and who is on the deed matters. So if you have a trust on the deed, that is who the grant is with. So you will need to have bank accounts set up for the trust. You will need to provide some copies of your trust documentation to us to establish who gets to sign for the trust. So that most often becomes a problem when the property is owned by 10 second cousins. And everybody has to sign things. So something to be aware of, that if the property is owned by multiple individuals will be involved in the grant. Next slide, please. Land must be zoned to allow forest management plan. Sonoma County is one of the counties that's a little more strict about zoning interpretation. Unless forest management is specifically allowed, the planning division of the county has let us know that what we're doing is not necessarily allowed. So timber production zone, TPZ, rural residential, ag preserve are definitely 3 that are allowed. There might be others, but I haven't encountered them yet. One of the caveats here in Sonoma County is that sometimes the zoning will say it allows removal of orchard trees. That is not forest management. That is ag practice. That is not forest management. You have to look for the call out that specifically says timber management. You can look up your zoning on the Sonoma County website, and if in doubt, you can call the county planning office, please. Next slide, please. Properties with conservation easements do qualify if forest management is specifically allowed in the easement. We're finding that most new easements allow that. Some of the old easements from many decades ago are very strict, but sometimes you can communicate with people who hold the easement, and they might be willing to amend the easement to allow for forest management to reduce fire danger. This is something that we've had grant applicants do, and it works quite often. CFIP cannot be used in conjunction with other programs simultaneously. We don't have that ability. So you can sequence CFIP and EQIP projects, you just can't run them simultaneously on the same acreage. And if your property is located in the coastal zone, currently the only practice we can fund is a management plan. Next slide, please. Allowable practices, like I said, we're fairly narrow in scope. We do management plans, supervision by a registered professional forester, which is a requirement. You will have to have a registered professional forester to even apply for our program. They will help prepare the application and get together your mapping and answer some of the questions we need in order to do your ranking. Reforestation projects, including site preparation, planting, and follow-up to planting, thinning, removing overly dense hardwoods or conifers. And we can do conservation practices. That's very rare. Those tend to be oak woodland restoration projects when they occur. And there have been times in the past when we were funding a replacement of watercourse crossings. That's dependent on funding source and is not currently something we're doing due to the funds we're receiving right now. Next slide, please. It comes up a lot. People ask us if we can assist with broadcast burning. We cannot. Our program does allow for pile burning, but you can use some of our practices to prepare the site for future broadcast burning. So you can develop a management plan, the thinning, the pruning, the pile burning. These things can be done first, and then later on you can try broadcast burn after the CFIP grant is closed. but we can't pay for the burn plan, the burn boss, or anything like that. We have to be completely divorced from those activities.
Do you think that will change over time?
No, because of our program being based in statute. We're disinclined to open our program up and ask for changes to it because we're afraid that we would get more than we asked for.
Can we just classify a pile as 20 acres?
But anyway, so we'd be happy to talk about, you know, helping people get to that step, but we can't actually participate in broadcast burn. Next slide, please. Maintenance requirement. This comes up a lot in Sonoma County. If you have a CFIP grant and your property is not zoned timber production zone, we will put a deed restriction on the property for 10 years, and that restriction stays with the land. So if you sell the property, the new landowner will be impacted by the deed restriction. And what it basically is that you cannot undo the work done by CFIP. That most often comes up if paid you to plant something, like we paid you to plant 10 acres, and then you decide to put in a 3-acre conversion to build your house. Would have to pay back the state on a prorated basis. So like if you put the house in 5 years afterwards, you only have to pay back half of the funds, not the full funds. But it is very important when you apply for a CFIP grant, if you know that you're going to be putting a conversion in or developing other facilities in the near future, in the next 10 years, don't put your CFIP project there. So have those kinds of plans already ironed out before you apply for CFIP. Next slide, please. Getting started. The first step is to go to the CAL FIRE website, go to the CFIP page, and download a copy of our user's guide to read through that. That has detailed instructions on how to apply. You'll work with the forester on that application, and as part of that process, you will contact, you would be contacting your local forestry assistant specialist, but as I said, we don't have one in this area. So it'll just go to the generic CFIP inbox, and then we'll pick a staff person to respond. Next slide, please. And now the bad news. So our website is currently out of date because of the budget freeze in April. The information on our website is not correct, and we've been unable to get it updated. We have submitted a request data, which are still in progress. We are hoping to switch to quarterly applications. So it's going away from every 2 months and going to quarterly. We are hoping that funds will be loaded to our budget by late September, and that we will have a solicitation close on October 1st. Unfortunately, our applicants who applied in May, who we selected for funding and sent forward, were not funded. So I expect that October batch will actually be us funding all the people who've been on hold since May. So realistically, the first batch that new applicants will be competing for is the January 2nd batch. And our website does not have this information yet because we are not sure about that funding yet. This is not uncommon. CFIP funding is spiky. So we have years where we don't receive funding, but we do expect to receive maybe 5 million this year. Next slide, please. Here in Sonoma County, we don't really do very many CFIP grants, typically 1 or 2 per year over the last several years. And they tend to be for management plans, and they tend to be short grants, 1 to 2 years. Because CAL FIRE made the strategic decision to downstaff this area and send funding to local RCDs to deliver a CFIP-like program that was more flexible and allowed smaller landowners to apply. So that hopefully will pick up again when funding continues. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah. I have a couple questions that, well, and I guess I want to say, the RCD run program is called North Bay Forest Improvement Program, or NBFIP, very close to CFIP, and it's also frozen right now. And so our forester decided not to put on a presentation about it today because he's like, no one can apply, so why advertise it? But I think it is important for everyone to know that we do have a program very similar to this one available for Sonoma County residents, with generally the same eligibility requirements and all of that. So yeah, Megan's a resource, and so is RCP if you're interested in participating.
And kudos to CAL FIRE to kind of consider that nonprofit collaboration. I thought that was a pretty unique way to approach a system where you were downsizing staff for this particular region, but we still had needs, and then the RCDs were able to negotiate a deal. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and gives it a little more focused attention, I think, to our community, and gives people more technical assistance around it. And yeah, I would say we've been funding maybe like in the ballpark of 10 contracts a year or something. So, and people are very welcome to apply. It's a little bit competitive, but not terribly. And we would love to see more applications. So now that I've said that, I just want to see like a show of hands of anyone who's ever had a CFIP contract, and that goes for you all on the screen too. If you've had a CFIP contract, and we can exit. Oh, I guess that's me. Stop sharing. And then, yeah, maybe you could raise your hand if you've had a CFIP contract before or ever use it. Dee has, okay. Pepperwood has. Nico at Shelterwood. All right, okay. So there's some people, if you're curious about starting a CFIP contract, there are people here who have gone through it, who can tell you what their experience was like from the landowner point of view, and then you can also talk to me or Megan about participating. So, any other questions for Megan? Please take magazines. Okay.
Just wanted to add to that, with the North Coast Resource Partnership, there's also the CAL FIRE Forest Health Pilot Implementation Grants that they just closed on August 4th, I believe, but there will be another round next year, I imagine. And those can be substantial, a lot of the same parameters, nonprofits, recognized and unrecognized tribes, government agencies, industrial and non-industrial, private landowners. I believe the same criteria, but it's, that goes through, I believe, first our TPRC, our Technical Peer Review Advisory Committee at NCRP. And CAL FIRE is a part of that. I'm happy to connect people with the TPRC on the next round next year, and see if CAL FIRE has any input on that, if there's gonna be any changes to that, but yeah.
Don't think that's under one of the programs I manage, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not familiar
Okay,
with
yeah.
it, sorry.
They can be pretty robust. They can be, I think the minimum request, it has to be over $500,000, so they are robust.
Yeah, and we can, there's a little time on the agenda to talk more about that after we hear from our next two speakers. So Sloan, you are next.
I don't know if I can share my screen.
You should be able.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, and then we should see you here. There we go. Nice.
So everyone needs to toggle over to Sloan's tab at the top of their screen. Hopefully that works.
All right, hybrid user is able to see the NRCS presentation.
Okay, great.
Hi, I said at least Eric can.
Yeah, we're good to go. Hi, everyone.
I'm less befuddled this time.
Yeah, just a little bit more.
So my name is Sloan Goldbader, and I'm the forester for the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. We service both Marin and Sonoma counties, and our office is based in Petaluma. So I'll do a quick introduction before we get to the money. We are a federal agency that emphasizes voluntary assistance to agriculture producers and non-industrial private forest landowners. We have conservation solutions so producers can protect their natural resources. We are a non-regulatory agency, and we provide free of charge services, including technical and financial assistance. We were created after the Dust Bowl in 1935 and used to be called the Soil Conservation Service, when the federal government realized that they needed an agency to give voluntary advice and help with the devastating effects of the Dust Bowl. So our assistance, so we have both technical and financial assistance. So our technical assistance provides advice and information based on the latest science and research to help landowners make informed decisions. And if the producer chooses to take the next steps working with us, we can help create a conservation plan, which I will talk about more on the next slide. And this will have suggested conservation practices that can help
the landowner reach their conservation goals. And this technical assistance is at no cost to the producers or the landowners. And then if the landowner would like to take a step further and implement the conservation practices outlined in their conservation plan, we also have federal financial assistance programs. And this again is at no cost to the producers, to the agency, just the cost to implement the conservation practices. So an NRCS conservation plan identifies a customer's conservation objectives and assesses and analyzes the natural resource concern on the customer's land. So the plan includes different conservation practices, and I'll outline some of the ones pertaining to forest land on the next slide, but also includes photos, maps, economic costs, a schedule of operations, soil maps, all the stuff to help meet the landowner's goals and resource needs. And this planning process is really a collaboration between the landowner and the NRCS planner, which would be me. And we are there to help assist you throughout implementation and evaluation of the project. So some of the common forest land practices we'll see here in Sonoma County. So the most common would be our 4666 forest stand improvement. So that would be our thinning practice. And that is commonly paired with 384, the woody residue treatment. So that's disposal of the slash material. And that can be done through pile and burning, chipping, or lock and scatter. So really up to the landowner and based on access and the terrain that they're dealing with. We also have other things like fuel breaks, tree establishment, brush management. So for those invasive species with options for a mechanical, chemical, and biological treatment. We also can help fund forest management plans. And then we also have engineers on staff that can help with things like access roads, rolling dips, culverts, and so here are the main programs here in Sonoma County. So our flagship program is EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And then we also have our Conservation Stewardship Program, which is for customers who have records of conservation or have worked with us in the past. So written records of conservation or have maybe been through EQIP before and want to do some in forest land. The CSP looks a lot like doing follow-up treatments on maybe land that had been thinned previously. And then we also have our Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which functions essentially the same as EQIP, except it has some involvement from our RCEs. So in 2023, sorry, this is actually a mistake. This is fiscal year 24. We had 99 funded projects through EQIP, CSP, and RCPP, and that was just over $4 million throughout Marin and Sonoma counties. And so that was for forest land, 28 projects were funded throughout the 3 different programs. And every application that I put in except for one was funded. So lots of money right now in our Inflation Reduction Act funding. So some of the eligibility for our programs, we work on private non-industrial forest land. And something I guess that's different than CFIP is that so the applicant must have control of the land through a deed or a lease. So we can work through lease agreements. We also, for some programs, have an AGI limit, so that's $900,000 over the last 3 taxable years. RCPP does not have an AGI limit, but EQIP does. And then certain categories such as socially disadvantaged, beginning and limited resource farmers and veterans are eligible for higher payment rates. And this is the big one for forest land is that properties over 20 acres must have a forest management plan written by an RPF. One exception to that rule is if your property has been burned in the last 5 years. So the application process, so it starts, you'll contact the NRCS planner, which would be me, to make an appointment for a site visit and assess resource concerns and potential projects on your property. And you'll then, if you'd like to move forward with financial assistance, complete an application with me and a conservation plan, which we will collaborate on. The application will be ranked and funding allocations will be made to the highest ranked projects. And then applications are accepted on a year-round basis and funding allocations occur in batches throughout the fiscal year. So for fiscal year 24, so last year, the batching period was in November. We do not have a batching period yet for fiscal year 25, but we expect it to be sometime again at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And then if your application is funded, you will have to work with the Farm Service Agency to establish your eligibility and your farm records. So like a farm and track number. So some other essentials about our program is that it is contract based, so you will be signing a document. We are not a grant program, and we are a cost share reimbursement based program. So the money is not paid upfront when you sign your contract. We do not ask for receipts on how you do the work, so you can do the work yourself, or you can hire a contractor. What we're really looking for is that the NRCS planner would come out, take a look at the work, and if it's completed up to our standards and specifications, which we will provide to you, then the money will be reimbursed. So once we see the treated area, that's when you will be reimbursed the money. And RPS or consultants cannot apply on behalf of the landowner.
A question on that for private landowner who would apply to this. What's the typical timeline for reimbursement? The first question I usually get asked.
Yes, so our reimbursement process is thankfully very quick, actually. So once I'm out there and everything's up to our standards and specifications, we see the money hit the bank account in about 6 weeks.
Can you teach FEMA about that?
Yeah, they understand that it can be a big burden, so I try to process those payments as quickly as possible. Wow. So a contract is a 3-year, depending on your goals and what different practices, they're typically a 3-year time frame. The payment rate is fixed, so different practices have different payment rates, and they typically pay on a per acre basis. And then completed work, like I said, is reimbursement for areas treated up to our standards and specs. I think my screen might be frozen.
Have you tried to stop some sharing and see if there's something that
Oh, there we go. So some things about timelines. If selected for funding, the application will have to go through the NEPA compliance process. So that will evaluate the threatened and endangered species found within the project area and cultural resources. So that the cultural resource clearance process takes about 3 months. And all NRCS projects also have to abide by the Northern Spotted Owl limited operating period. So no noise or smoke generating work can be completed from January 31st to July 10th. Yeah, like I said, we accept applications year round. And I would say kind of from the time that you come into our office and start working with you, you could expect work to commence about 1 year later.
So really quick, is that for only sites that are known to have spotted owl like activity zones or just everywhere?
Everywhere, all of Sonoma County, unless you have records of spotted owl surveys.
Oh, which takes 2 years to gather.
Yeah.
So it's either wait 2 years or wait 1 year.
Yeah, yeah. And that's my contact info, if you'd like to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any quick questions on Son's presentation?
I'll just comment that the environmental compliance in that NRCS is very helpful through the NEPA process, which has been very helpful for folks that aren't familiar with that. So want to shout out archaeological resource and the biological resources, health surveying, all that stuff is very valuable.
And can we see a show of hands of people who have worked with EQIP before? All right, Pepperwood has, anyone else, EQIP contacts? No? Okay, well, Pepperwood can help you if you're interested and want to know what it's like from their perspective, but. Right, Kim?
All right. Eric, can I get a head nod and were they able to see that? Thank you, you're my guinea pig today. Thanks, folks, online, and I'm hoping that you're not having too much issues as far as finding the different presentations and so on. So, real quickly, my name is Tim Batchelder. I'm the Vegetation Management Coordinator for Sonoma County Vegetation Management Grant Program, as well as for Ag and Open Space. And that's where I reside, is in this program. So let me see if mine advancing okay. Oh, well, that's such a bummer. All right. Oh, weird. We having fun yet? Well, let's go ahead and go to this slide then. This is so again, this program was founded by the PG&E settlement funds back in 2020. An agreement was reached with the PG&E for the Tubbs fire impact, and a total of 147.2 or $149.2 million was awarded to the county. And then the Board of Supervisors had the insight to be able to dedicate 25 million to vegetation management. And that's defined by a process where the Center for Law, Energy and the Environment from Berkeley hosted a number of different stakeholder meetings to be able to figure out, what does that mean? How do we apply 25 million in a way that's equitable, that helps us to accomplish our goals, and do it in a way that's super efficient? And so what the CLE report created was 5 specific thematic areas that we've been trying to address. And specifically, it asked us to create a grant program. That first bullet of immediate vegetation management activities, that is the grant program. But then as we started working in this arena, we really found that this is also, the grant program is also satisfying some of the community outreach and education efforts. It also included workforce development and capacity building, because some of these grants that people are applying for, such as tending the land, that's a perfect educational tool that landowners will be able to use in the future. So we decided that it's the vegetation grant program is actually accomplishing a number of the goals that were outlined in the CLE report. And so thinking about the activities we've been able to fund, we've had 74 vegetation management grant projects since 2021 when the program was launched. We've spent about $12.3 million on treatments throughout the county. Now we have to caveat that with saying that districts 2 and 3 do not have a lot of fire treatment lands. They're mostly grasslands or areas that don't have as much risk as some of the heavy forested areas, such as districts 1, 4, and 5. And so a lot of those projects have been focused on those other districts, but we have included some funding for educational purposes to be able to provide funding for groups that are working throughout the county. And so some of the key statistics, 630 defensible space or infrastructure type treatments, 82 miles of shaded fuel breaks. That's pretty exciting in my mind. 64 miles of roadside treatments, and about over 3,000 or 30,000 acres of prescribed fire that has happened throughout the county. Not just through the grant program, but being supportive of different agencies and organizations who are doing the work. And then another thing I wanted to highlight in these the accomplishments page is just the 7 different regional collaborations. And I didn't list them all, but these are the ones that we've been able to work with, provide funding for, to be able to support some of these really interesting collaborative efforts across multiple landowners in regions that are very prone for fire, and how do we try to resolve some of the issues that are going on in that area. And then finally, I wanted to mention about 45,000 acres are under a California Vegetation Treatment Program, or the CalVTP, and that is, in a sense, the way that long-term fuel treatments can be applied on the ground for several of these different landowners and collaboratives. So with that,
Real quick, Ken?
Yeah, sure.
Those numbers over what period of time?
Since 2021.
So the last 3 years?
Yes.
Perfect.
And then, so thinking of project types, we have been pretty holistic and multifaceted in this realm. Access and egress was a really high priority, defensible space, community risk reduction, wildland fuels treatment, community education, and environmental compliance. Multiple treatments can be prescribed burns and shaded fuel breaks, those types of things. So we really tried to be open-minded about the types of projects that we wanted to support. And these are the ones that we landed on. And each applicant would then be categorized into which projects they're really trying to aim for. And we would address their qualifications based on what they're able to accomplish within that particular project type. These are the specific criteria that we looked at. We wanted to support, be holistic in our approach, thinking about not just the fuel treatment, but thinking, is it for the ecosystem that they're working in? Are they thinking about being able to support communities with low income populations? Do they have the organizational capacity to be able to do the work that they're proposing? That's a big one. Maintenance is a big one. We are not going to pay for eternal maintenance at these projects, so they had to figure out a way in which they're going to try to accomplish that in a way that was efficient and applicable for their particular project. And so those are some of the other areas that we looked at during the assessment process. And so I wanted to just kind of highlight some of the key characteristics of this particular grant program, because it really diversifies from what Megan and Sloan have provided at a state level and a federal level. This is in fact a local grant. And so we get to focus on the things that are best for Sonoma County, best for landowners here, and dealing with a lot of different diverse habitat types, cultural resources, and so forth. So I really want to emphasize this is a local grant where it's local decision making with a great cast of characters to help us select the different grants that we've supported over time. It's funded by the PG&E settlement, I mentioned that. The available funding is determined each year by the Board of Supervisors. So I present to the board, this is what we're hoping to fund this year, and we'll have some back and forth about what is the appropriate amount for each year. We have leveraged a fair amount of match from these different projects. I think I mentioned in one of my earlier slides, 12.3 million have been grant funded, but we've had $3.7 million supported as match on these different projects coming from different sources. We usually allow about a 2-month, by the time we release the request for proposals, we give about 2 months before proposals are actually due. So that's a good chunk of time. We heard a lot of whining in the first couple of years when we tried to keep it lean and mean. So we said, all right, here it is. But nevertheless, we were getting them at 4:59 when they were due. So no matter how much time you have, it's always a last minute haul for a lot of folks. So that's all grantors are pretty common, familiar with that. So no grants are allowed to individual landowners. That's a key difference between some of the programs you've heard already. The purpose of that is we're really trying to foster collaboration between different organizations. That might 10 minutes.
No, I was 8 minutes. You're good.
Okay, thank you. We're really trying to encourage collaborative efforts and outreach and organizations who can then bring different landowners together to have a larger impact if we can. Match is not required, but it's certainly encouraged. Payment is done in full when the grant agreement is signed. That's extremely risky. But it's a local grant. We're trying to create a sense of collaboration and communication. We're not going to be out there cracking the whip to make sure you're getting the work done, but we are going to ask you to submit a 6-month fiscal and narrative description of your efforts so far, so that we know that it's progressing. If there are problems, you're going to let me know every 6 months. If there's problems, we're not going to meet our goals, then we'll be working with you to try to figure out a solution. But we don't want you to fail. That is absolutely essential. So we're trusting you by giving the money up front.
Kim, in that reporting process?
Yes.
Do they generate the report to the Board of Forestry or do you?
No, it is a report to the Vegetation Management Grant Program. So the Board of Forestry is not involved in that other than through the Cal BTD.
Under the BTD, yeah. So you have to, okay.
Right. And so it is really a lot of back and forth. I do site visits on a pretty regular basis to make sure people are doing the work that they hope to do. And also just to maintain that communication between what the people are doing on the ground and the program. And then, let me see, I think you mentioned all those factors. So this is an annoying map that I absolutely love, but it shows all the different fires that have occurred in Sonoma County and where different projects are located. So I have it behind me if you want to take it. If you're here in the room, you can take a look at it more carefully. But it is pretty impressive to see the array of different projects per year under the different categories that we've been able to support. It also gives you some of the numbers that we've been able to use per different treatment type. Finally, I just wanted to kind of go through this typical timeline that we use. I'm gonna separate the track 1 and track 2. Track 1 is really focused on our traditional request for proposal process. And that is we open it up for proposals, we get that proposal at 4:59 on the last deadline. And then we have a review committee and then we enter into a grant agreement with the applicants. And then they're off to the races. They have 18 months to be able to complete that project. Track 2 is a really interesting narrative because it was something that we presented to the board last January to get approval for this last 2024 cycle. And so in each case, we had $1 million for track 1 and $1 million for track 2. And so you'll notice in track 2, we have a little bit of a different trajectory and we have all those boxes in yellow, that's local and regional workshops. And that's key because Ag and Open Space is working with the RCDs with a grant we got from the National Wildlife Foundation to be able to do these workshops. And you guys have heard a lot about those workshops over time, but that is really helping us to build up the funding opportunities to support track 2 projects. Am I doing on time? Are we?
I think just another minute.
So let's just take a look at these two different and compare and contrast this different style. On the left is your traditional request for proposal. We get applicants from a variety of different sources, including Marshall's Group, the RCD submitted applications, Sonoma Ecology Center, and the Resilience Coalition, Landscape Coalition submitted proposals, Fire Safe Sonoma. All these different groups are going through this traditional route. Some are really excellent proposal writers and they're familiar with the process and do a great job. Others are not so familiar. So we're seeing kind of that rise of projects and kind of the traditional folks who really are savvy in all these types of things, and others who were dropping away because their proposals just weren't very good. And so, but the project may have been good, it's just they weren't articulating what they're trying to accomplish on the ground. So these are the process that we use through the CWPP project entry portal. That was something that was created with the help of Permit Sonoma and their efforts to support the CWPP. And so we're starting to kind of coalesce on that, and we have our systems down pretty good. The track 2 is a unique approach where we're using the workshops to help us to define and understand which projects really could rise to the top. Those workshops are helping to provide direct technical assistance to landowners and organizations who want to work with us so that we can provide funding to them. And it's a way in which we can help prioritize where the work's getting done. Prioritize projects or landowners who are interested in working together to accomplish these landscape type of field treatments. And then we're also providing direct technical assistance so that the quality of the work is rising up through these workshop processes. And so we still run those projects through the project entry portal and then end up with projects that we can support, not on a specific time like we have in track 1, but over time when we have that relationship already established with these landowners and organizations, we are able to yield better projects over time. So we have $1 million devoted to that track, and we're fulfilling those obligations soon. So.
And you can use track one examples, right? To
I
show
can't, if there's
track
projects
two.
out of track one that we really like, we can start getting closer to those organizations. Host a couple of workshops, have those people in the room, seeing if they really do have a viable project and move forward on that.
So say for our landowners over on Mill Creek and in that area, Austin Creek Recreation area, the two projects you showed us on that day up the Ranch Fire Road, Wallace Creek, Big Ridge, Brack Road, those were those were perfect. They were
Right.
Gorgeous
Yeah.
fuel breaks. I mean, those were just amazing. And to just be able to see it and
Yeah.
show other landowners, agencies,
Exactly.
who are like, this is the goal, right? I mean, it was fantastic.
That's a great point, because that's kind of what we're trying to do, is get people on the ground at these fuel treatments to get a chance to see and visualize. We're talking about, maybe a 5-mile shaded fuel break. What does that look like? Have the landowners talk to other landowners who have actually implemented, so they are more familiar. It's not Ag and Open Space, the RCD talking to them, but it's these landowners who are being able to express what have been the challenges. Did it meet their expectations? How do you introduce prescribed fires and other tools that might be appropriate?
And to complement that, I think Cal Fire in the next couple of months coming out with a video about how the work done before the point fire was sort of a pre-deployment, right, of that really made a huge difference in their ability to respond effectively to the point fire. It was very specific examples that Marshall Tudor,
Right.
others brought up, and Ben Nichols brought up, that it was like natural resources management is a form of pre-deployment, right? That will protect all of your properties and everybody. Like, it was really, really cool to see that actually make a difference. Yeah.
Nice, fantastic.
I'm gonna make a shameless plug for the wildfire fuel mapper, which I saw a little button on there.
Yeah.
But it's been hopefully a really helpful tool for people to be able to use to submit the maps and all the necessary resources needed for that grant application. Which I think is wildfirefuelmapper.org.
Sonoma County.
Sonoma.org.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools that a lot of landowners organizations aren't so familiar with, and so we try to incorporate those into the workshop so that the tending the land is a great resource that people aren't familiar with. We're just kind of in that launching process. So we'll have Eric and Caitlin present at different workshops. We're gonna have Devin talk about some prescribed burns and pile burning processes. So we're trying to bring in the kind of the best trainers, people with the best knowledge to be able to share and engage with landowners who might not have as much experience with this type of stuff. So real quickly, I just want to mention measures of success from our perspective, based on the grant experiences that I've seen on the ground. Contractual arrangements when there's a local service provider, a neighbor who's helping us to do work on, say, Coast or Fort Ross Road. It was a good example of a local service provider who worked with Judy Rosales and her group to be able to do really successful work on the ground. It's more of an investment. There's skin in the game. They're a landowner as well. Environmental compliance, having that good technical advice and foresters and buyer professionals, make sure you're reaching out to get that type of support. Experience in managing grants and fiscal and narrative reporting. We're hoping the workshops can help with that as well. So, but in many cases, groups didn't have the capacity to be able to handle new grants or a significant treatment. So we try to provide some support that way. And then finally, environmental compliance on large scale projects, things like the California treatment program, vegetation treatment program, CalVTPs. That's a complicated environmental compliance document. Landowners shouldn't have to become well versed in that. We get a forester to be able to handle that, and we're good to roll. All right. So I think that's pretty much my last slide. I just wanted to highlight some of the great people that have been able to participate in the technical advisory committee, who have also helped us to kind of screen through the criteria that we use to evaluate the different projects, and the really great folks that are on that. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Any quick questions from folks?
Thank you, Kim. I just wanted to say, I feel like the programs that Megan, CFIP, and Sloan with EQIP what you guys were talking about were really great programs for landowners to apply for individually. They are like, I have my property, I know what I wanna do here, it's just me and my 20 acres or 50 acres or whatever. They're gonna apply to one of those programs individually. But with your program, it's something that I think is really a great resource for landowners who want to work together. Say in a fire safe council or a forest council, a neighborhood group, neighboring properties who wanna work together. To accomplish something a little bit bigger and across multiple parcels. Not always, if you could apply if you had just one large parcel, but I think your program is a really great resource for folks who are ready to start working kind of at a larger scale and have a project that's gonna have all kinds of benefits to community safety, to forest health, to wildlife. And then you're able to help them develop that idea even further and get it funded. Is that kind of a fair,
That's
kind of like
exactly-
differentiation between the presentations here?
Yeah, and some people have, been frustrated with the fact that we don't support individual landowners, but, fire knows no landowner boundary. And so we're really looking at people who are willing to work together, identify, the specific strategies that would best protect their home as well as the community as a whole. We really rely on the fire professionals. CAL FIRE is a huge asset for us to be able to tap into. Ben Nichols and Marshall have been super instrumental in helping us to figure out what priorities, how do we reach out to specific areas, what is the best strategic line for a fuel break, for instance, and be able to identify those types of needs. Yes, please.
Yeah. If, there are projects that cross county boundaries, is the open space district able to participate in some type of partnership that engages more than one county?
Yeah, so the program is specific to Sonoma County. However, we've had a great example that Marshall presented to us for a large BTP that crossed the Mayatama boundary of the county. What we asked in that case, our funding can only be spent locally, but he was able to get match from Lake and Mendo counties to be able to support that effort.
Okay,
So
great.
that's how we collaborate so far. There's been some efforts on the closer to the Napa Sonoma County boundary where the Mayatama Volunteer Fire District was working together with their partners across the county line to be able to extend a fuel break that was funded initially by us.
Yeah.
To be able to go into Napa as well.
Great, thank you.
But it is a challenge, and that's kind of our next iteration, is to think about how do we do more cross-county efforts.
I'm just curious on if you got a lump sum for this grant allocation, where are you in terms of drawing that funding amount down?
Way to be the Debbie Downer and so it is a challenge because we have spent a significant amount. 12.3 is a lot of money out of the 25 million. So we've invested in some technical assistance contracts, specifically with the RCD, who's also subcontracting with other partners to be able to provide support in the workshops. We were able to raise some funding with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. But that is a process that we're dealing with, is thinking about that longer term trajectory. How do we support this? And Marshall and the other fire chiefs have really taken an initiative to provide Measure H funding. And that seems to have gone through. I just found out yesterday that they will no longer be challenged on the November ballot to be able to continue to act that program out. So that would be the future of funding sources, as well as a crew who's able to actively do treatments. That will be managed by Marshall, where they'll be doing field treatments, and we'll hopefully be able to continue to do our work by giving funding to be able to provide environmental compliance, and then the field treatments will be implemented by Marshall's team. That's not to be printed in the paper yet.
Yeah, no,
but we're
that's
working
awesome.
on that
That's great.
relationship.
And with that, with Measure H funding, Marshall plans to triple or quadruple the size of his crews.
Fantastic.
Which, just hoping that means tripling the acreage. It probably won't work out exactly like that, but, that gets us to the climate goals I mentioned, and also in terms of workforce development. I did want to mention, as Brooke was saying, I want to give credit where credit is due historically. So Brooke mentioned our office paid for to restart the internship program, the forest internship program, the JC. Well, we actually dedicated Lytton travel mitigation funds for that. And we were able to do that really quickly, and get that going before the fall. And it was rare that government can do that quickly. We use that Lytton travel mitigation dollars, but like part of our office's philosophy is like mitigate it's ironic, not unjust to say that a sovereign tribe has to mitigate building homes for their members on its own homeland, right? Their own unceded homeland. So our philosophy is like, well, let's all these funding sources, whether it's Measure H, but especially tribal mitigation dollars, and we're gonna be pushing on this on a lot of fronts, is return to source to the land, especially as traditional ecological knowledge becomes a part of mainstream treatments, right? I know Marshall's working on outcompeting broom because there's you just lose every other battle, right? Outcompeting with native plant restorations and things like that, and really trying to heal the biome as you're doing fire protection and climate work, heal the biome after, what is it, 2 centuries of fire suppression and genocide, right? And so, just wanted to honor when Brooke mentioned that, I'm like, no, we get this money in, mitigation, we're like, no, forget that, we're not throwing pottle, mitigate what, right? No, return to source, and hopefully, as like you said, that if we're able to grow those crews, and I know Sonoma Land Trust and Pepperwood and regional parks, everyone needs more people to do the extent of the work that we're gonna be able to fund, but what's the pipeline? Who's being trained? Who's coming into it? So hopefully we can fill that reservoir of people because the motivation's still there, and then as the PG&E funds are drawn down, Measure H dollars, which are ongoing, at least for the next couple decades, right? Those types of things we can throw in the pot.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah.
Well, I think we're just about at time. We have maybe just 2 more minutes to ask questions of our financial program managers. So if anyone has any questions, please raise them now, the 2 minutes that we have, and then we'll shift it over to Blue Forest. But I also heard that we lost video of the room, so maybe let's try and reconnect the owl. While we're doing that, are there any other questions for Megan, Sloan, Kim?
I'll just say, we've used all 3 of the programs and they've all been wonderful to work with and great resources for landowners. Can't say enough good things about all 3 of the programs.
I don't think that's it. Okay.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I mean, I definitely plug all the programs as well. They're very essential, and CAL FIRE staff and NRCS staff are great to work with, as well as Kim and all the partners that you pulled in to make the vegetation management grant program happen. So
Well, Devin, which one was the best?
There's so many people in the room. I'm gonna be quiet for potential future funding.
So please, if you have any questions or want to learn more about it after the meeting, just come up to us. I also can email out, links to more information, so you can go directly to each of these people after the meeting and get connected. So, okay, so now we're gonna turn it over to something kind of different, something that isn't available right now for people in the room, but is a percolating possibility. Is that kind of fair?
That's a perfect way to describe it.
So looking forward now.
Just as a little bit of preamble and step back, Ariel is going to be presenting on Blue Forest and what we do, but as for a little bit of context for the folks in the room, we've been spending the last few months doing some exploratory work in the county and trying to understand if we can take our financial models and processes, which were built largely with public lands in mind, large tracts of Forest Service land in the Sierra and in other areas, and apply that in largely private lands here in Sonoma County. So we're going through the process that I like to think of as speed dating. So really appreciate Dee and Kim and Adriana for bringing us here, helping to connect us with folks in the county and just kind of get a lay of the land and understand how and if we can be additive to the process that's happening here in Sonoma. So thanks with that, we'll pass it to Ariel.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. And yeah, it's really nice to be presenting in person. We're a remote org, so it's cool. Great. Although I appreciate you all. So my name is Ariella Tushimiski-Jalak. I'm here with Micah and Phil. We're from Blue Forest. And as Adriana said, it's a little bit of a different flavor. There's nothing that has come to fruition yet. It's also, we're not a grant organization. We're not going to be granting money. We're really here to support other organizations who are trying to carry out work. And hopefully some of those organizations will be connecting with individual landowners. So I think today we'll start just by giving a sort of high level overview, and I acknowledge that some of you already know about Blue Forest, so apologies for a repeat. But then after I talk a little bit about who we are as an organization, Micah will go into detail about some of the work we've done on other landscapes, on public landscapes, and then I'll sort of circle back and talk a little bit about what we're doing in Sonoma County, what we're interested in pursuing, and we'll love to hear any questions or thoughts after that. So, Blue Forest is a conservation finance nonprofit. Our mission is accelerating ecological restoration through conservation finance. And what that means really is that we're bringing together innovative finance and funding mechanisms along with science and benefit analyses of restoration and collaboration to help support the pace and scale of restoration, particularly at a landscape scale. And there's sort of a lot of words that I just threw out, but the idea here is we, and as everybody in the room is, are really motivated by the fact that restoration, ecological restoration, produces a number of benefits, both for the individuals living on and around the landscape, for the landscape itself, and for other entities who may be outside of the landscape but could benefit from having a safer landscape from, say, decreased wildfire risk. And so we bring together benefit analysis, basically understanding if a project were to occur, what would the benefits that accrue might be, whether it be decreased wildfire intensity or risk, increased water quantity and quality. And we use that to help channel some funding into the projects from entities like power and water utilities who may be interested in these benefits. Our model also primarily implements a finance component, where finance is having investors come in, put money into the project and expecting money back. And we do that to, with the goal of accelerating the pace of projects, because as some conversation has occurred, grants can take a really long time to reimburse. And so we can offer financing to organizations who are expecting to receive grant money to cover that upfront cost and then get paid back over time. And again, we're really motivated by collaboration here. So love meeting folks who are interested and passionate about this work as we are. And we're coming in not with on-the-ground knowledge, except for Micah, who's actually a resident from around here, but primarily not with any on-the-ground knowledge. And we're not here, we're interested in planning or permitting projects of any sort. We really want to be additive and help support projects that already exist from folks like the RCDs who are creating these projects through these funding and financing. So a little bit of fun dates and background just to get a sense. We were founded in 2015 and we became official partners of the U.S. Forest Service in 2017. So as Micah mentioned, a lot of what we've done has been on public lands thus far, but we're really excited to explore the potential for private lands and bringing multiple entities together, sort of like Kim was talking about, the importance of that sort of collaboration. And the way we carry out our work primarily is through our Forestry Links Bond, or FRB. And Micah will explain a little bit about what one of these has looked like. But we have launched a couple of these on a number of landscapes, and these really bring together, again, this financing, funding, and benefit analysis to help support projects that are already existing. So just to reiterate a little bit more, the benefits of this entity, the FRB, that we like to bring to projects that already exist. So closing both funding gaps through adding additional source of funding and alleviating cash flow constraints associated with waiting around for grant reimbursement or needing to pay contractors up front and having issues with that. And really in doing so, we're using an innovative model of financing and unlocking that model to increase pace and scale of implementation. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration associated with this necessarily, and we're really excited to do that. And we've also found that on various landscapes, our work has also helped to catalyze new forms of collaboration through partnerships and groups. And really just bringing together all the folks on landscapes who are really passionate as we are about landscape scale restoration. Then the last thing I'll say about the Forest Resilience Bond is one of the elements of it as we launched them, which again, none have been launched in Sonoma County yet, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Is we're interested in communicating the impact of this restoration and of the Forest Resilience Bond itself to other folks so that other people can learn what we all know, which is that restoration is super important and there are a number of different ways to measure that and to demonstrate that. So I know I threw a lot at you. Hopefully it'll become a little more clear. I'll pass it over to Micah to talk a little bit about what one specific Forest Resilience Bond has looked like.
Yeah, thank you. So our pilot project, our first pilot project was in the Sierra. It was the upper Yuba watershed. And the work that was happening on that watershed, I'm sure all of you can guess, it was thinning, prescribed burning, meadow restoration, etc. It was about a 15,000 acre project. It cost about $4 million. And part of what Blue Forest was able to bring to this project was one, financing to help the project get done more quickly. One of the kind of anecdotes that we like to share about this project is that partner said that this would have taken 10 years or longer. We were able to help get that work done in 4 years through those financing mechanisms. And the other benefit that we were able to bring was bringing in new sources of funding by engaging beneficiaries like the Yuba Water Agency and private companies to help pay for these benefits. So Yuba Water in particular put $1.5 million towards the Yuba 1 project. And the success of Yuba 1, and this kind of highlights the way that we like to look at our projects, has been able to scale to Yuba 2, which is a 50,000 acre project for about $25 million. And Yuba Water, not Sonoma Water, saw so many benefits from the first project that they actually contributed $6 million to the second round of this project. So this is obviously highlighting water, but we like to take this approach very holistically and think about the broad scale of benefits. That's biodiversity, water, carbon, and all of the other myriad benefits that flow from these sorts of projects. So in this case, the project benefits were increased water supply and increased hydropower generation. Yuba Water owns their own hydropower. So they were able to realize the economic benefits of thinning and increases hydropower generation, as well as flood control, and also, of course, supporting and sustaining local jobs. Here is a bit of a detailed model of our financial, of the Forest Resilience Bond. We don't need to dive into this deeply right now, but what I would like to just highlight is this. There's my arrow right there. There's the Forest Resilience Bond. And as you can see, we have these payment agreements coming in from Yuba Water and our corporate partners. And money being put into the FRB from investors. And I'd like to highlight that these are below market rate impact oriented investors. They're not looking for returns on these projects. The money that goes into the FRB, the implementation partners, which was NFF, National Forest Foundation in this instance, they don't pay interest on those loans. We're not looking to make lives harder for our partners on the ground. There is interest on those loans that the investors need to see, but it's very low, it's below market rate. And that is paid for by the payment agreements from beneficiaries on the ground. But a big chunk of that money is also passed through the FRB to the implementation partner so that they can get more work done than would have been done otherwise. So as you can see, just real quick, we've got money coming from the investors into the Forest Resilience Bond that is passed through to our implementation partners, which in this case was NFF. You could also think about RCPs or something similar. And then the Forest Resilience Bond is paid back via payment agreements from these beneficiaries, as well as traditional grant agreements like some of the ones that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. And we're happy to take questions about that. I know there's a bunch of arrows and boxes on that slide. But the gist of it really, as Micah said, is we have a couple different folks coming in to help support projects. And really the people actually implementing the project, we're looking to give them a 0% interest loan just to speed along implementation. No need to worry about interest, just pay it back with the grants. So what we're looking at now in Sonoma County is we would love if an FRB could be potentially additive. to find a way to construct an FRB with one or some of the projects that are occurring. So as we've sort of discussed, we're really looking for projects that have already been planned or are in the process of being planned. And really projects often that have either wildfire or water benefits. Those are the two types of benefits generally that we found the most traction for from these payers, like a power or water utility who might be interested in putting money into the project. And so as we're doing this, we've been connecting with a bunch of different organizations. And so Dee, thanks for introducing us to a bunch of folks. Adriana, it's been great connecting with you over this. Would love to connect with any and all of you who might be interested in continuing to talk about this. But really what we're focused on is these projects that might have these benefits, and then a need from the organization is carrying out these projects to have both increased funding. I know there's always a need for increased funding, but also the financing element, where grants will be coming in, but it may take a while for that reimbursement to occur. So if financing were to be additive and helpful, that's really the sweet spot that we're looking for. We're also looking to connect with stakeholders who might be interested in putting money into these projects. So, for example, we worked with PG&E in the past, and we've got our eyes on them for this county. We'll see what happens. But if there are other sort of entities that any of you all can think of that might be super interested in putting money into a project because they don't want, let's say their utility lines to burn down or something like that, we're also sort of keeping an eye open for that. And really broadly, we're just interested in connecting, understanding the landscape, seeing whether and how we can be helpful, and really just looking forward to continuing conversation with anybody who might be interested. So with that, I will say thank you. Those are our emails. They're all pretty straightforward, which is fun. And I don't know how we're doing on timing, so happy to take any questions if we have time for it now, and then feel free to come find myself or Micah or Phil over there afterwards if you'd like to ask more.
And one thing that I'll just kind of put a fine point on here too is that because the way that we try to, we've had the most success approaching new landscapes is through a pilot to scale model. Really what we're trying to do, and part of the reason why we're highlighting projects that are already planned or permitted in best case scenario, is so that we can come in, help collaborate with those organizations, bring in new sources of money, get those projects done more quickly, and then become a longer term partner on the ground to think about long-term planning, long-term funding and financing options. So our goal is not to come in, finance and help fund a project and leave, but really just use that as a test case to show that we are additive, find the right partners to work with, and then think about those long-term collaborations. So Kim, thank you as always for your help thinking about those sorts of long-term collaborations. And so if anybody has folks, organizations, projects that are planned and permitted, please let us know.
Yeah. And question about timing of your looking for projects. Are there timelines that you have now for future short term or in the long term?
So in terms of funding, it really is gonna come based on which projects we see. We are interested in starting a smaller pilot model, like the type that Mike was talking about, maybe in the next few years. There's something that exists there. Larger projects, maybe we can wait for longer once we have a smaller proof of concept and really get people understanding the model and bought into it.
And you can work cross county lines. Is that also my understanding? I'm just double checking.
Yes,
Yes, that's correct.
and I would say just to in terms of the benefits and funding, all of that is obviously resources and assets are very spatial, right? So when we have a project, we're able to look at those and get a better idea of what sort of assets are on the landscape, what sort of resources flow from those projects. And then it makes it a lot easier for us to go to a potential funder and say, hey, look, we can reduce fire risk on your landscape, which is adjacent to this land by X, Y, and Z. That will manifest as this many potential dollars of avoided risk or enhanced revenue over the next 10 years.
And the water resources that come from forest resilience programs, I mean, it's just, I think, not understood.
Yeah.
As much because of the fires being such the catastrophic need that we're not concentrating on the importance of protecting the forest, the soil, and therefore our water.
Yeah, and obviously in Sonoma County, water is incredibly important because we get a lot of our water through stream bank filtration systems of along the Russian River, and if you have a fire, then you have sedimentation and dissolved organics in that land can lead to water quality issues. So yes, absolutely, water is very important. Fertility, say something.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, two things. One is, it's not public yet, but we just finished the paperwork on our first watershed resilience bond, which is being implemented on the Southern Oregon, Northeastern California landscape with private landowners. It's working with a group called Pheasants Forever, who work with NRCS quite a bit and EQIP funds, and what that fund will allow Pheasants Forever to do is to allow private landowners to pay for their portion of NRCS EQIP projects over time, and then allow us for new beneficiaries or can't recognize that do exist, possibly even cover those landowner costs at the end of the day, so that the landowner doesn't have to put out any funding. And I think that's the ultimate goal there, but that landscape is a little bit challenging in terms of those traditional beneficiaries. And the second thing I'll mention is we're starting to develop a workforce development loan program, which would provide low cost loans to workforce development organizations, recognizing that's a need as well for those organizations, and they have some of the same challenges with grants and reimbursable grants that a lot of implementation partners that we work with do. So I just wanted to mention those as well, and we'll happy to talk more about both of those where there's interest.
And who are the type of investors? Can you? Types of investors that you're already working with and are hoping to engage? Like I know some people that are in the investment, wealth management, and then on a large scale, that they're local. Perhaps they'd be interested in investing in local projects. So, but I'm just wondering what you now have. I know you've done some work with some insurance, and I just want a little.
We have, I think it's good to differentiate, just or to be really clear, when we're talking about investors, we can either be talking about investors into the forest resilience bond. So those investors providing debt front capital of financing for these projects. And those can be traditional impact-oriented investors or foundations, other sources of philanthropic dollars. And then there's also the beneficiaries like Yuba Water, right? And those can be water agencies, corporates, high net worth individuals, we try to be really creative as we think about those beneficiaries. So basically any entity which benefits on the ground from these forest restoration projects. And again, we've had the most success around fire risk reduction and around water benefits. But are also exploring carbon biodiversity and things like that. So we have the investors into the project, and then we have the beneficiaries that help fund that project. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, from Zoomland, Caitlin Cornwall here from Sonoma Ecology Center. Always just really quite excited about this whole structure. I wanted to ask about a universal kind of obstacle that a lot of us face in getting projects on multiple private parcels from concept to ready to implement, which is that we can have lots of conversations with landowners who are generally interested and supportive of doing work, but then there is just a massive amount of time and assessment and conversation that is needed to get those landowners to actually sign paperwork giving legal permission and access and all that. And I'm just wondering, like we work in a big area in and around Sugarloaf Ridge State Park, which is very steep, very fire prone, very landslide post-fire prone. I think a pretty high priority location. What has held us back is just the amount of time and money needed to get all those people to sign on the dotted line and assess all those individual properties to know exactly what the work plan is on those individual properties. So I'm wondering if these kinds of projects can cover that part of the work in any way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of our work with Pheasants Forever is to provide that technical assistance. And so there is that incorporated in our agreement with them. That is something they're also used to doing. And that is something we would want to work with a local organization here to be able to provide that. a lot of times when we're putting a forest resilience bond together, demonstrating the value of that to a lot of, both existing and new funders helps generate the resources to provide that technical assistance. If that is acknowledging funding and financing is not the only barrier here, which is what you're talking about. We also often help, our partners raise resources to cover that. But we acknowledge that there is that kind of overhead cost with these projects, and those are expected as part of kind of a program that we put together.
And I would add to part of the benefit of financing is the ability to plan longer term for some of these projects and hopefully spread that overhead across more acres, so that we don't have to keep going back and doing that same process for new projects, but instead bundle the size of those projects and just have a bigger impact.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts for us? Or also happy to chat afterwards.
I was curious about Silk being one of your contributors. Could you explain where the origin of that partnership?
Yeah, so we engage corporate funders based on sustainability goals that they have. So in particular, has facilities in the Sacramento River Basin, and we're looking to do water replenishment offsets for their facilities, essentially for the projects that were generating additional water through either vegetation management or meadow restoration, offsetting the use of their facilities in the basin. So that's where their involvement came into play. And I would say, in the past, that particular flavor of funding has been relatively low, say in the like tens of thousands of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Recently, we've seen interest uptick to maybe $500,000 to $2 million for those types of companies that are interested in being a funder on these projects. So that's been a nice transition, I would say, over the past probably 5 years.
I have another question, if I could. I'm curious if you're already working with Sonoma County Water Agency on these concepts, and also since it's really fascinating to hear about the Workforce Development Loan Program, who in Sonoma County you might already be talking to about that aspect.
Yeah, we have a great relationship with Sonoma Water. It's honestly kind of parallel to, but slightly outside of this project, only because we just have a longer relationship with folks there. Molly and Sasha are both good friends of mine from grad school, so as it happens. And so yes, we've been talking with them, but we're not really at the point where we're starting to look at specific beneficiaries, just because we're still trying to figure out where on the landscape we can best engage. And like I said before, that's going to influence who we can engage for these projects, right? Sonoma Water, especially with their drinking water, with the pumping and the stream bank filtration, you can imagine if a fire happened close to there, it would have a big impact. If it happened further away, all that sediment might settle out before it gets there. So, that's a perfect example of how spatial a lot of these benefits are. And then, sorry, your second question, I forget.
Just workforce. I don't know if that's totally separate or if you're already starting conversations in Sonoma County about workforce, because that's a topic that we and others are very close to, and just want to know how much we can think about workforce benefits as maybe part of resilience bond.
Yeah, we're actually working on developing a workforce, I forget what we're calling it, workforce bond, basically. Workforce resilience bond. That is just, it helps get the dollars on the landscape, but through a different mechanism, which might help us access private lands a little bit more. So essentially helping to, instead of provide funding and financing to a project, instead to an implementer, somebody who's actually boots on the ground doing that work. And so we've had conversations with folks in Sonoma, and right now it kind of seems like the most actionable path forward for us is to work with the local collaboratives on the ground and try and identify those projects, but still very interested in figuring out how we can help with the workforce capacity. But it does seem like if we can get money on the landscape sooner and in larger quantities, then at least some of that workforce will follow behind, and then we can start thinking strategically about how to bolster workforce capacity in the area.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that we're talking to a couple of North Bay organizations, but we're still in the design phase of that loan program. So if there are challenges that you see that you'd like to talk about so that we design a program that's actually useful, happy to talk further about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be terrific. There, just today, we've talked about several entities that are working on workforce. And so if we could get them to talk with you all and find out what they are experiencing and what their future needs are, that would be fantastic. So let's do that.
Yeah.
Caitlin, you want to take that on?
You mean like set up a follow-up conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's worth a follow-up conversation. I'm thinking about people like really like two really different kinds of programs that I'm thinking about are the JC and North Bay Jobs with Justice, like completely different approaches, but cranking out people who are, you know, otherwise likely to get pushed out of Sonoma County just because of cost of living. And there's so much work to do. Yeah, lots to talk about there. So yes.
And the Audubon Canyon Ranch
Program.
work. So let's, yeah, I'd be glad to work with you on that, Caitlin. So let's figure out how we can help make that happen.
Great.
Yeah, I would say our conversation with North Bay Jobs with Justice was one of the reasons we wanted to do that. So we've had, but still very early conversation, so happy to reconnect there.
Great.
Well, thank you for setting aside some time for us to present. Thank you again for the invitation. And yeah, like we said, please feel free to reach out and chat. We can help brainstorm or if you have any thoughts.
Well, I also know that I've been talking with James Gore and David Gravitt about Blue Forest because they were introduced to them with the was it the Sonoma Mendocino Economic Development Symposium?
The Biomass Symposium.
Yeah, and when I talked with them, they would be interested in knowing more about this approach and this adding to the monetary pie, I guess. So maybe we should talk about that. I'll call you.
All right, well, great, we're just about at time. But thank you all to all the presenters and everyone who came today. I'm really glad to see everyone. It's wonderful to get us all together. And thank you, Chris, for coming too. Really appreciate that. I want to hear more about NCRP and all the good things trickling down from there. Yeah, so everyone,
Thanks to the landowners that came, and we really hope that we can help you in any way that you need help. So please stay engaged with us, and we have this as a recorded session if you want to review some of it again or get the slideshows. Please contact Adriana, as we love to help you out.
Do you want to make everybody else?
Yeah, well, that's a match.
I was just curious, you mentioned Jobs of Justice and the resilience force. We're doing a lot of work with them. Actually, most of their cohorts are former students of mine at junior college. I teach part of resilience in Spanish and was able to partner with them to do the training, the first part of the training. Now they've done just robust multitudes of training after that. What's the nature of the potential partnership between Blue Forest and say Resilience Force and JOJ?
Yeah, I would say that they're a little bit different of a focus. So the Forest Resilience Bond is focused on, landscape management and what are the outcomes and benefits and need for financing there. I think from our workforce loan program, it's working from the organization out. So we care less like where are you working, but where are your needs in terms of being able to scale up in capacity, take on more folks to do workforce training and access larger grants, and so that's kind of the idea there is how do we help you grow your program.
And it de-risks, say, like all of those costs and overhead and everything, payroll, all the things that you would normally need to get up front to be able to even be pre-positioned for these things.
Correct.
Okay. No, that's wonderful, because that's one of the problems we're having is like linking them together adequately so that people can have that living wage, that $36 an hour prevailing wage like that they're getting with some of the work. And then, but what are these huge gaps or, either seasonally or because there's a, regulatory, cancellation of that period, whatever it is, right? That has a huge week to week economic impact on the families that we're talking about.
Yeah, we work with organizations that have 20 different funding streams and to get that all like in place and get payroll every week and pay contractors and benefits, it's a real challenge. So that's part of what we're trying to solve there. And then our third leg of the stool that I think of that Dee alluded to is our wildfire innovation fund, which invests in biomass utilization, facilities, infrastructure, transportation, logistics, that kind of thing.
That's okay. I remember hearing about that. Awesome.
So what we need to get you guys, you and Mr. Gore together like that.
We are at time and I just wanted to kind of make one more plug for we're doing a picnic next September as another in-person event. That'll be a difficult one to do as a hybrid. So we're gonna meet out at Riverside and a regional park thanks to Brooke for setting up the reservation there. We're gonna have kind of a potluck type meal. We are inviting the supervisors and their staff to join us if they can. And we will send out more details via our Forest Conservation Working Group. So I encourage you to participate in that. What's the date? I think it's September 19th, or is that right? September 19th is our targeted date. So you all are welcome to come and join us for that. And we look forward to seeing you. Thank you for all those folks who came in person and all those on the hybrid. I know it's convenient, but you are welcome here as well. So please
Hi, Lynn, I
join
see you
us.
were there before.
Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us online. Really appreciate it. See you folks.